It's not too late. We still have some time. It's not too late, and we still have some time, like our brother Lazarus, to be set free from the shackles of sin, to be untied, and to be set free. It's not too late. If we think about this gift that God has given us for these 40 long days of this time of Lent to prepare ourselves for the celebration of Easter, we know that it's 3/4 over. So if this is Ash Wednesday, when we are marked with dust and ashes, to remind us of our humble beginnings, that without God's breath in us, we are absolutely nothing. And without God's breath in us, at the moment of our death, we return to absolutely nothing. No matter where we are in our lives, no matter where our economic or social standing is, we all begin and end in the very same way. Without God, we are nothing. And then we process through this season, this time of Lent, and we hear about how God continually loves us, how God has given us Jesus for the forgiveness of sins. And now we are at this 5th Sunday in Lent, about here, if over there is Easter, and it's not too late for us. It's not too late for us to turn away from sin and to be faithful to the gospel. And we are given these 3 scriptures from John's gospel, the last of which we proclaim today, to remind us of the effect of sin in our lives. The woman at the well went there at noon because there is an effect of sin in our lives. She was ostracized from the community. The other women, people talked about her, so she went to the well when no one else was there, and she encountered Jesus, the living water. Last weekend, we read from the gospel that was referred to as the man born blind. And because this man was born blind, people believed that someone sinned. Either he did or his parents. And we know that the effect of sin in our lives, we wonder where it comes from. The question that was being posed in John's Gospel is, whose sin is it anyway? People believed if something bad happened to a good person, that good person must have sinned. And there's remnants of that still in our own lives. But Jesus not only restored his sight, but he gave him insight, eyes of faith, that he could see that Jesus was the one, the Messiah, who was to change everything. And it's not too late for us to believe, just like that man born blind. Today we have the final of this 3-set series. We refer to this as the raising of Lazarus. And I know that you can't all see the stained glass window that's over in that corner there of the raising of Lazarus, but there Jesus is at this tomb with this big stone rolled in front of it. And he heals the consequence, the global, the cosmic, the universal consequence of sin. We know when there is no more sin, there is no death. We know the effects of original sin by our ancient ancestors, Adam and Eve, that sin created death in the world. It's not what God intended from the beginning, but because God has given us free will, with that free will comes choice. Our ancestors chose the tree of knowledge instead of the tree of life. And through their disobedience, through the encroachment of sin, came death. Now Lazarus was dead for a while. His sisters reminded Jesus it's going to stink in there. And doesn't sin stink, really? You guys are not agreeing with me. Do you like the way that sin smells? Doesn't sin stink? Of course it does. I'm going to ask it one more time. The answer is yes, if you're confused. Doesn't sin stink? And sometimes we're in that stinky, dark cave. We like it in there, right? We like it in there because it's what we're used to. But Jesus says, open it up. Come on out. Get untied. Those shackles of sin that bind us and frighten us. Let it go. Let it go. Be set free. And what a beautiful invitation that Jesus makes to Lazarus, but he also makes it to us. This morning we had 5th and 6th graders going to celebrate the Sacrament of Reconciliation for our Sunday school program. So, I always do a little catechesis in the form of a quiz. So I'm going to quiz you. You didn't do very well on the first question. So, 2 seasons of preparation for the 2 biggest feasts in the church year. The 2 big feasts of the church year. We wear white all the time for these feasts. One coming up right around the corner is Easter. And the one in December on the 25th is what? Christmas, right? And we have 2 seasons of preparation for those 2 big feasts. We always wear purple in those seasons. The one we're in right now, Lent, and the one before Christmas is Advent. Okay, good. Good Catholics. So we have this chance to turn away from sin, to ready our lives, our hearts. So when we get over here to the Easter weekend at the Easter Vigil on Easter Sunday morning, do you know what we get to do? Do you know what we get to do? We get to renew our baptismal promises. I want to ask you 6 questions, or Father Dan, Father Tom at the 11. I want to ask you 6 questions, and the answer is always I do. Do you reject Satan? What are you going to say? And all his empty promises. So you're going to answer I do to those questions where we renounce sin. It's not too late. We don't want you to stand there thinking like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm going to answer. I don't know what I've been thinking for 40 whole days. You have time. You have time to turn away from sin and to be faithful to the gospel. Next weekend, we're going to start with Palm and Passion Sunday. We read both Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, the Palm Sunday part, but in the gospel, we read the Passion so the church hears at least proclaimed on a Sunday once a year. And it is to remind us of where this journey leads us, that in our surrender, in our service, and in our sacrifice, we are invited to turn away from sin, to leave the stinky cave that's dark and moldy and musty. Even though we might like it in there, we're asked and invited by Jesus to leave it behind, to be set free from the shackles of sin, and to come out into the light where Jesus is our Lord, where he invites us to turn away from sin and to be faithful to the gospel. So as we come to these final days of Lent, it's not too late. We still have time to turn away from sin and to be faithful to the gospel.